Welcome everyone to this special meeting of the City of Delray Oaks City Council. Today is Thursday, July 15th, and it's 5:30. Karen, could you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Shirley.
Here.
Councilmember Donaldson.
Here.
Councilmember Gagliotti.
Here.
Vice Mayor Lintel.
Here.
Mayor Kerr.
Here. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Denise, could you start us off, please?
Thank you. First time since young school. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. To who?
Republic.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, it's time for public comments. This is general public comments that deal with matters subject to the jurisdiction of the city and the council that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the city council on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered. There will be a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker. No action will be taken on matters brought up under this action, and all comments will be referred to staff. I just want to remind everyone this isn't a conversation and everyone has one opportunity to share. So what I'd like to do is start with Veronique.
Yes, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to call in today to express my opposition to the FORTAG routing as it is currently routed. I want to also say that I'm not against FORTAG. I did vote for Measure X. I feel like Delray Oaks is not ready for such a big regional project. We don't know yet how the Fort Ord property is going to be developed. We don't know where the route is going to be needed. I commute to CSUMB all the time. I won't be able to use the FORTAG trail because it goes into remote areas of Fort Ord where there's no phone connection. So I won't be, and it's going to make my commute longer. I'm also against the route through the Frog Pond, the tons of concrete that will be brought by the tunnel. The fact that the city does not have any plan or enough money to maintain the trail, the fact that there are no bathrooms other than the bathrooms at the park between here and Fort Ord. Really, it would make more sense to have this route go through 218, which is the real problem. That's where we see problems with traffic, and there's a way to accommodate that road to make it safer and slower and better for bikes. I also, by doing this bike commute from Delray Oaks to CSUMB on a regular basis, I know that the only dangerous stretch on that path is around South Boundary Road. And the current FORTAG routing won't even help with that because it stops lower than South Boundary. So I'll still have problems going to CSUMB. And by the way, there's a really great dual path that goes up above South Boundary Road all the way to CSUMB already, which separates bikes and pedestrians from traffic. So really, I'm just using my 3 minutes to say that we need to save our green spaces in Delray Oaks, save our residential streets. We don't need a marathon length regional rec trail to come down our small village through our small streets and kind of devastate one of the only beautiful things we have around here at Delray Oaks, which is the Frog Pond. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for sharing, Veronique. I see Don Gruber.
Good evening. This is Don Gruber, yes, Delray Oaks resident. And I would like to echo what has already been said and point the emphasis to the Frog Pond, which you probably know has been my special interest for many years. So I think that what happens is that the Park District does control the Frog Pond, but you control the access to the Frog Pond and the egress. And for that reason, I think that the city council ought to reconsider its early move in favor of this and rescind that and not allow it. The Frog Pond is the jewel of the city of Delray Oaks, and it's revered by many people, including myself. It's used by many animals, by many plants, which will be adversely impacted by developing it. And if one looks at the current FORTAG drawings of what will go through that 300 feet of the Frog Pond in this incarnation, it does do a lot of damage. It goes through dense habitat and it solidifies it with concrete and with structures. I think it's entirely wrong for the Frog Pond. I think it's entirely wrong for the city of Delray Oaks. The second part of that is by bringing bikes and other users through a tunnel under 218, you set up the stage for the future in which the trail will go right or left out of the tunnel, but will then go through the whole Frog Pond, and that quadruples the damage to the Frog Pond, in my opinion. So no need to belabor the point. Please do what you can to keep this development out of the Frog Pond, and do so by keeping it out of Delray Oaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Randy.
So I'm reading a letter for James from Lowell Street in Seaside. I absolutely do not understand why FORTAG and TAMC are so adamant in not creating that lighted signal intersection at Canyon Delray Boulevard in Carlton. Why are they so obstinate? What are they truly thinking? What is the rationale for their unwillingness to create an intersection and eliminate the very, very expensive and disruptive tunnel consideration? The scientific data and community upset does not support their previous decisions and lack of common sense logic. I believe that the logical approach is an obstacle to their locked in, full steam ahead engineering mindset and thinking. Note, there are 6 signal intersections on Highway 218. They include intersections at Highway 218 and Highway 68, and also signal intersections at Del Monte Boulevard, at Home Depot entrance, at Hillview Avenue, at Sand Dunes Drive, and at Fremont Boulevard. I believe that because a huge amount of money is available, they absolutely do not want to lose the taxpayer $10.3 million project funds after the 1997 creation and adoption of the Fort Order Reuse Plan. TAMC and FORTAG know that as government entities, they exist solely because of those government funds. If they don't spend all the monetary dollars, they lose the funds which they could go elsewhere. It also reflects poorly on their previous analysis, decision-making, planning, and review activities and management. Previously, a very expensive bike path to nowhere was constructed on Fremont Street in Monterey. Presently, there is a Delray Oaks Carlton bike path to nowhere. When are the decision makers going to listen to the community and its people? When? In conclusion, if there is no imagination and concern by these government bodies for the Delray Oaks community, Seaside, and Greater Monterey Peninsula area, then there is absolutely no hope in this world.
Thank you. Patrice Vecchioni.
Hello, how nice to see everybody. I live on Saucedo in Delray Oaks, and I would just like to say I'm very excited about the bike path. I think it's a fabulous idea. Statistics show that when cities have bike paths, crime goes down, issues with homelessness go down, and property values increase. It's a way to get people out of their cars to be in our city in a wholesome manner. Nobody who rides a bike, I'm a bike rider and a walker, nobody takes a ride and stops in any one place. We move along, we walk, we ride. So I just wanted to allay some of the concern about the idea of our community being flooded with people, because I don't think that's realistic. I ride on the bike paths and on the roads in Monterey, and that's never been my experience. I ride along, then in 2 minutes, I'm somewhere entirely different. I think this is a fabulous project, and I give it my great support. Thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you. Karen, I am not seeing any other hands raised. Oh, I see Nancy.
Oh.
Nancy, go ahead.
Reset.
Nancy, can you?
Unmute.
Randy, could you please start the clock over while we figure out how to get Nancy up and? Nancy, I just asked you to unmute. There you go.
Okay. I'm opposed to the bike path. There's the bike path to nowhere on Fremont. Why not extend that through Seaside? And then the bikers, if they choose to stop to use a restroom or eat something, they have a place to go rather than using the one single public restroom in Delray Oaks. And this is sort of, it's like the bike path to nowhere on Fremont. It starts and ends and doesn't do anything. And I'm opposed to bicycles in the Frog Pond. I think that will disturb the natural environment a little bit too much for my concerns for the frogs and nature around it. So why not extend the bike path on Fremont to the high school in Seaside and then make that go up to the college so that the students could maybe ride bikes up to the college and take a class or a seminar or something up there. And that way you're contributing to the community. And if you bring the tourists into Delray Oaks, they're contributing nothing. It's just costing us maintenance. They won't be spending any money here. And that's another reason I'm opposed to it. Monterey, Carmel, Pacific Grove have hotels and hotel tax and upscale restaurants that contribute when tourists come, but we won't have anything. And that's really just about all I have to say. I am opposed to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jim Vanderswan.
Hello there. Good evening. Good evening. You need to turn your speaker down there. Okay. Okay, I suppose I can get my 3 minutes going here by saying I too oppose this project for a number of reasons. And the more I learn about it, the more reason I have to oppose it. It's really not needed. If this were a private enterprise, nobody would take it on because there's no way to make any money off of this. We're not charging admission to use a bike trail. The simple fact is it's another bike trail to nowhere. It starts at the back of Safeway, doesn't even connect to Fremont Boulevard, and ends at a school that isn't serving Delray Oaks. It serves Seaside. There are a lot more bikers in Seaside, people who ride to work. That's where you would want to put a bike trail and maybe tie it in with something like what they're doing in Broadway, which is effectively combined those little parklets for restaurants, some parking spaces for cars, and bike lanes on both sides, and everything flows along very nicely. All of this works very well in a big city like Portland or Amsterdam or Paris, where people will go for a ride and maybe stop and pick up some groceries for the night. People in California don't live that way. We don't go to the grocery store and pick up one night's worth of groceries. So to say that you're going to use your bike to get groceries is ridiculous. Number one, you'd have to be able to tie the thing down and lock it up before you go into the store. You'd have to have a big enough basket to take the groceries that you need. And of course, most of us buy a week's worth of groceries. So going by bicycle isn't going to work. As far as climate change, this is not going to help a lot. The simple fact that you're going to narrow the mouth of Carlton Drive from Canyon Del Rey, that right turn on a westbound lane is more than 90 degrees, where now you can make that turn coming off a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, and at 30 miles an hour, you're off the road. You're going to have to slow to almost 10 miles an hour. That increases accident potential. It increases acceleration and deceleration of cars. All of that contributes much more to the pollution than a couple of bikes that run through here. Spending $13 million on a project that you don't yet know whether we're people to use. And if somebody were to use it and find something foul in that tunnel, whether it's something that some waste that somebody left behind, or somebody got mugged, or worse yet, somebody got attacked, nobody would go in that tunnel. You got a $13 million trail that nobody wants to use anymore. The likelihood of that is pretty strong because all of this is not going through the right place. There are many other alternatives, attempts you could seek to tie in everything else from the bike trail from Chef Lee's all the way across into Seaside, and then we could even do a spur into there. But the way this plan works, there's simply way too much money involved, too wide a trail, overnight lighting, no access, no security, no extra restrooms, and no extra parking. So I don't think it's going to be a viable option for this city. All it's going to do is cause more problems and cost the city and taxpayers a lot more money. That's my say. Thank you so much for considering it. And I hope the council and the mayor will take that in consideration. It's important to you.
Thank you, Jim. Mary O'Donnell.
Hello, thank you for your service to the city of Delray Oaks. And thank you for this opportunity given to us to express our opinion. I am opposed to a large scale engineered project that would interrupt the quality of life here in Delray Oaks. One thing that I really value about our town is that, you know, I can go walking out here in nature right now, the way it is. Of course, another crosswalk would be nice at the Frog Pond and probably some bike access somehow, but I'm opposed to these large engineered projects that take a lot of time and money and interrupt what we already have, which is we already have some really nice green space. And although I'd like to see accessibility for people, and I like the idea of a bike path, but I mean, gosh, I've been walking the Frog Pond for 24 years and hearing the history about how people started that Frog Pond and what it's meant to our families and our community. Why do we have to change things all the time? Why can't we just keep things the way they are? Now, I know that your objective is to improve it and make it better for our quality of life. So that's what I'm concerned about. I live on Work Avenue too. And when I saw the plans of the trail coming down and then making the right-hand turn, sort of eliminating the Work Avenue ability for people to just go down and make that right-hand turn, that just, I don't know, we're all trying to work and live here and get to work. And so we need to be able to flow through our neighborhoods and move with ease. And I just really am nervous about the project and what type of interruption that would mean for our community, for our traffic. And but if something is going to be done, I would just ask that it just be kept very simple. And we don't need these large scale, grandiose projects designed by engineers that don't live here. So thank you for letting me express myself.
Thanks, Mary. I want to make sure that everyone who would like to share has the opportunity. Now is the time.
Not seeing any hands, Mayor.
Okay, I'm not either. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, it's become very clear to me over these past few months that our citizens feel as though they're not being heard by this council. So I did a little bit of research and I found that the resolution for the master agreement for FORTAG was signed by the mayor in April of last year. And that's after she placed it on the agenda as a consent item with no public input. I think our citizens deserve much better than that. They deserve to have an item on the agenda for our next meeting where we can specifically address the FORTAG master agreement and discuss any potential changes. Unfortunately, I can't do that by myself, so I need another council member to support me, and that's what I'm asking for right now. So if there's a council member that will support
Madam Mayor,
putting that on the agenda, that's what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Yes, Scott, thank you. This is not appropriate during public comment. It's not on the agenda. We can talk about it offline. Alex, did you have something to add?
that was going to be my comment as well, Mayor. It's something that can be agendized, but because it's not on tonight's agenda, we can't get into that during public comment.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comments? Ruth?
Hi, thanks. Ruth down on Wallace Place, and I spoke at the last one, and I thought, well, maybe I had my share to say what I had to say at that time. But other things I have been thinking about in terms of this plan, to which I'm opposed, is that part of the plan, the biggest idea of this was all this has to be ADA compliant. That's why the switchback, that's why the initial incursion into the frog pond. I didn't hear anything from Tansy Fortag as to how they are going to mitigate the elevation change from Canyon Del Rey to Carlton. I would venture a guess that no one in a wheelchair could manage that hill. I can get winded walking up that hill, and it would take probably stronger legs than mine on a bicycle to actually get up top of the hill to Plumas from Canyon Del Rey. So that's my further objection. Plus, I know that this is just phase one of the plan. It's already harming our frog pond. Further plans, further phases of this will destroy even more of our wetland preserve. It's called a preserve. It means to be saved. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ruth. Any other, whoopsie. Any other further public comments? Karen, do you see any?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close public comment and we're going to move on to new business, which is an agreement for the general plan assistance with Cal Poly University, subject to review by City Attorney Lorca. I'd like to turn this over to Acting City Manager Hoyne.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and guests. This item is an action item to consider the use of the California Polytechnical State University students for a general plan update and then provide direction to staff. Under consideration tonight is to review whether to update the city's general plan by contracting with the Cal Poly Corporation, which is an affiliated nonprofit that serves the interests of California Polytechnic State University, to update the city's general plan. The city of Del Rey Oaks general plan is outdated, to say the least. While the plan has had several more recent amendments, a comprehensive general plan update has not occurred in decades. The city is currently considering ways to update the entire general plan, and this is one possibility. The students conduct this work through a class project. It is overseen by an experienced professor in this field. And the staff has been working very hard in the last couple of weeks to try and get as much background information and answer as many questions as the mayor and the council may have this evening. The cost for this project, the general plan update portion of this project, is $40,000 plus additional costs for staff, our planning staff, to review and oversee this process. Myself and Denise Duffy from Denise Duffy and Associates and City Attorney Lorca have been having meetings and reaching out to folks at Cal Poly and other areas who have used this service before to try and get as much background information as possible. So I will, at this point, turn it over to Denise for just a quick summary of her involvement in this so far.
15 million. What?
So thank you, Acting City Manager Jeff. We came up about this idea at the request of the city, and essentially we're up since that time. I've been trying to research the general plans that the Cal Poly students have done, and we were able to have a really good conversation, long and great conversation with the professor who has managed this process and this Cal Poly Masters students for the last over 16 years. So they have a myriad of different plans that they have done through different jurisdictions. I have reached out to 8 to 10 of them, Unfortunately, it's not fully vetted yet because it's pretty difficult to get sometimes to get responses back. So the questions I've asked is, how did the process go? How is the students? How are the results? How is it an implementable plan, and how is that working now some years later? And what is the staff time and cost that are associated with it? And were you happy with it? What can we learn from your experience? And so I don't really have a full sense of enough responses. I've gotten 3 responses, and they're only on one side or the other, and I think it's not fair until I get more responses to be able to really even talk about them at this point. I think what we've done is, I think we've got a really good idea from Cornelius, Professor Cornelius, really what the process is. As part of your packet, you have a scope of work, not just a contract, but a scope of work that identifies what the process has been in the past for different jurisdictions. You would provide for the first part between September and December, when the school period starts for Cal Poly, you'd be provided the students would mobilize, work under the professor, work with the city to be able to get inventory information, base data, etc. And they would prepare what's called land use inventory, a baseline assessment for the entire city. And that's something that I think their first cost for that was I think $10,000 to $20,000. The second part of the school year, which would be the winter and spring quarters for Cal Poly, would be the phase where they would be developing policy, alternatives for the land use pattern for the city, projected pattern, and working to develop actually the draft general plan. So essentially, they would also conduct scripted public meetings whereby the students would be coming forward and asking for trying to vision with the city participants, trying to do some survey work to be able to get more information from the citizens about what they want to see in the city. And they have a fairly programmatic approach that they've done through the professor. He said that they've done this a number of times, and so they're going to have the next part during the winter time. They would be looking at, or I'm sorry, the winter and spring semesters, which would be 2022. They'd be looking at 3 different alternatives, what they do the baseline alternative, which is basically status quo. They do a minimal development alternative, and then they do a large growth alternative. And those are the 3 alternatives that they said they would provide for the general plan and ask the city about, citizenry. And then they would develop their policies, programs, and prepare a draft general plan. The city would be involved during this process, but the city wouldn't really the public wouldn't get the general plan itself, what we learned today, until about maybe summer of 2022, because they're going through providing documentation, preparing the draft general plan, and then it gets handed over as an administrative draft document to the city for review, and then it becomes public. I think the time frame that he discussed, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, would be about the summertime of 2022. At that point, too, the plan for them is they would like to do the EIR at the same time, which is another cost of $100,000. That would start, and it doesn't go to the Cal Poly corporations. It's specific to the professor and students, and under, I think, not the nonprofit, but that would be starting in 2022. I think after the city has looked at the general plan, I think probably sometime between June and August 2022. And then they projected that time frame for the EIR would be then 1 full year. And therefore it would be sometime in 2023. The earliest would probably be July to August 2023 to have a general plan and an EIR to come before the city for adoption. And he basically talks about this being, a visioning process, and that we would have a mapping program using base maps that we have and the city has in GIS format, that AMBEG has, handing it over and doing an individualized land use inventory. And I think they also talked a lot about the number of meetings that they would have. I think 2 in the fall of 2021 while they're doing this initial visioning. Also sort of focus groups. They offered to do a survey, a specific survey related to just their alternatives, not necessarily the survey that the city's talked about, which is sort of a broader survey effort. I think that's as much as we learned to this point. Alex, would you please add to my quick staff report here?
I think that pretty much covered it. You know, I've reviewed the draft agreement.
Would you mind explaining what a general?
I'm sorry. I think the mayor was asking if we could please explain what a general
That's
plan
still
was.
unstable, but Denise, could you explain the importance of a general plan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mayor, I think you may have wirelessly cut out. So if I heard you correctly, explaining the importance of a general plan, what a general plan is. It's not, if that's correct. The importance of a general plan is that it's a guiding principle development plan for the city. It's where the city wants to grow, what the city wants to do. The city general plan has a number of different policies and programs that are to be implemented over the course of the next 10 to 20 years. Typically, if you have a general plan that's conducted now or prepared now, it would be a 20-year guiding principle document with not just land use patterns, but vision for where you want the city to grow and policies, programs, objectives to how to get there. And from the general plan falls also the zoning, and it provides the guiding principles. There's 7 required elements of a general plan, and people may be aware of this because we have an annual general plan update report that we've gone through and talked about general plan, but we can also provide that to the public so that it has a whole PowerPoint of general plans and what they do and our city's general plan. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Alex, did you have anything to add? I think.
No, I was just going to say I've read the draft agreement. It looks on first pass to be acceptable. We met with the professor today, and there would be an opportunity to refine a few points that I would like added, if indeed that was the direction of the council. But from my perspective, that's pretty much it.
Mayor, I believe you're freezing up quite a bit on your connection. It looks like the mayor is logged off and is going to try and log back in. So I guess we'll be patient to see if that occurs.
Over if the mayor's suddenly taken away.
I may take this opportunity to just identify a few of the cities that the Cal Poly students have worked on that we've been trying to contact. One is the city of Wasco. One is the city of Guadalupe. One is the city of San Juan Bautista, McFarland. A number of them, some of them a little bit different than our area, but I think Guadalupe is probably maybe a good comparison. Normally these are small cities that have had years of not having a general plan prepared, and what my goal is to reach out to all of them is just have a chart that says how what the comparisons are, at least provide a verbal report or something if any more information is needed. But those are also, I think, Councilmember Shirley, you might be able to identify that they're also online if you'd like to look at what they look like. And we can provide that information publicly as well.
Denise, on these plans that the students have created, have they been acceptable to the cities to use them as presented, or was additional work that needed to be done?
Thank you. Well, that's what we're trying to delve into a little bit more. It's a mixed bag right now, but we're, I think there's a lot of benefit to having the land use inventory, and that is, it's not a policy document. The land use inventory is what's done first, and then the general plan is done afterwards. So I think, you're probably going to have a lot of city interaction, and we're going to try and find out as much as we can, about every single one of those to be able to say that. But I think by and large, the cities have been using them, if I could, my assessment, because I can just tell by them, it's on the websites. So,
Alex, it doesn't appear that we're getting the mayor back. She may have some connectivity issues where she's at. Would it be appropriate for our vice mayor to take over to proceed to council questions and then to public?
It would.
Councilmember Lintel, would you mind assuming the chair and going out to council and then public, and we can provide a little bit more information, have a little more discussion?
You're on mute.
You're muted. There we go.
Okay. Would any of the council members like to comment on this proposal? Let's go to Kim Shirley first.
Thank you, Ms. Lintel. I am really excited about this potential for a few different reasons. One, I'm a teacher, and so I'm biased. I'll tell you that to begin with. I like the idea. I went to Cal Poly too, so there's some additional bias there. Their motto there is learn by doing. And this is exactly what they are doing, is they go into small cities and they're able to understand what it takes to do a general plan update, and they could be very thorough but while they learn, and then we end up with a product. So it's really a win-win. It's going to be a lot less expensive than if we were going to do all of these components contracted through someone else. I like the idea of the focus groups. I like the survey. I like the visioning. That's exactly what we would like to do to look towards potential development. And really, our general plan does need to be updated. It hasn't been updated since '97. So it's 24 years old. And this is something that's been on our strategic plan, is to try and get a general plan update. And so I think this is a great opportunity. And so I would strongly encourage staff to look forward, to look towards getting a contract with them and get it started. I like the time frame that it'll happen. We know it'll start happening in the fall. So I don't think I have any further questions, except that I'm happy about the process. And I want to thank Denise and Alex for looking into it further. So thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Let's see. What about John? Would you care to say anything?
Yeah. I mean, so let me first start with, I'm also biased with Cal Poly students just because I'm also a Mustang, and I was there when Kim and Kevin were there. And so, and I definitely learned by doing and doing and doing and doing. That was kind of the longer version of that motto. But and so I like the idea of utilizing students where we can. I'm not so concerned about the expense for the scoping for the help. I would be concerned about the expense if that was, that was it. Meaning that you generally get what you pay for in these efforts, and so I would not want to replace Denise Duffy and Associates just because they have a vast experience and they basically touched every single general plan on this in this area. And I think that's an absolutely critical piece of this. And so that brings me kind of to what my initial concern was when I saw this, was this is a much larger scope than I think was initially kind of proposed in concept. And it's about 60% more in terms of cost, which I think is commensurate with the additional scope. And the broader, or at least the broader scope. So I would actually prefer if the scoping of any work, of any of our vendors, be it Cal Poly or anybody, would basically come from our staff. They would be driving basically the scoping. That's generally how this works, rather than accepting from a vendor, this is what I'm going to do for you, and then you just write the check, which is kind of the way that this is presented. It's kind of a one-stop shop, and I can understand the town of Guadalupe. I know Guadalupe and the town of San Luis Obispo, or not San Luis Obispo, but San Juan Bautista and Wasco. I mean, these are all little towns that I've been in, and I could totally understand why they would say, look, they don't have a Denise Duffy, and we do. So I would actually want, and Denise Duffy is our planner. I would definitely want the DDA as well as Robin Zender and our new city manager to be involved in the actual scoping of whatever work Cal Poly would do if we do hire them. I definitely want to know the review of, I want, before I make any decision on this, I'd like to know what the review is, I guess what Denise came up with in her review. And then touching on the city manager, I mean, we're at the precipice of hiring a new city manager, and I would like that city manager, if they do accept, to be involved in this. They're ultimately going to be driving this effort, and that's something that I didn't see here. It looked as though it was, again, it's kind of like Cal Poly says this is what they're going to do, and then they go into their kind of mode, and it didn't look like there was much touch with the city manager. It looked actually like Kim was one of the contacts, and that's probably not something that it's not generally, council members don't generally talk to the vendors. It's all generally run through the city manager. So before any decision we made on this contract, I would want to know, I'd want our city manager in place. Then I want them to go through a scoping effort, and then I would, and then let's talk about what that revised scope would be, and see where they would fit in that. Those are kind of my thoughts on this.
Thank you, John. Scott, would you care to say anything?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Lintel. First off, thanks to Councilmember Shirley and Mayor Kerr for their initiative on this and exploring this relationship that could have benefit to the process, going through and updating the plan and the city. But I do have two concerns. My first concern is transparency. It's very clear that Mayor Kerr and Councilmember Shirley have been working behind the scenes to craft this contract with Cal Poly Corporation. I mean, it's very detailed to include prices and terms, and I didn't see it until yesterday. I know in the past there'd been discussion about the program in general terms and our potential involvement, but I had no idea that it had progressed this far. My second concern is the lack of time that we've spent educating not only the council, but the staff and our citizens on this process. I mean, I know personally, I don't feel comfortable with it right now. Maybe a briefing by the Cal Poly Corporation would have been beneficial, and absolutely more time to review the contract. And also, I mean, it's been mentioned here already, but I also think the planning staff needs more time to review and analyze that contract and what's involved with it, so they can provide the best recommendations on moving forward with this. And as mentioned by Councilmember Gagliotti, I think most importantly, we need to get the new city manager on board so it can be discussed with staff with enough time to define what the process is, that we drive it and we do it on our timeline and not the other way around, where it's driven by the Cal Poly Corporation. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a few comments. First of all, I don't see the need to rush into anything like this, which is so important to our city. And I would like to see, since it is so important, to see it done by professionals rather than children. Denise Duffy, who has worked for us numerous times throughout the years, she's very knowledgeable about Delray Oaks and about the county of Monterey, as well as experienced in doing things such as the general plan. Maybe, you know, like if she could be the primary and work with the students and they would work under her, something like that perhaps could be arranged. That would make it more comfortable for me. But also, do we have the money now to develop a new general plan? I personally would rather see some of our monies go to paying off the debt where we're paying interest on, and then at a later date develop the general plan. I had a couple of questions too on number 6 on page A1. The findings will be presented to the Cambria planning staff, not Monterey, but Cambria, which is not in Monterey County. And then on page 6 of 8, what are the responsibilities of the technical representative, Kim, that the contract shows you as being responsible for this? Can you tell me what the responsibilities are?
Yeah, I just would want to, Councilman Donaldson, I don't want you to think that we're doing this behind anyone's back. This has been in my council reports. So from the very beginning, and I'll tell you how I stumbled upon this. I went to this was a Central Coast leadership meeting that was talking about climate action plans. And because we don't have a climate action plan. And so I've been going to a lot of meetings wanting to see what they're like, wanting to see if we could do a climate action plan for our city. And in the chat box, he's the chair of this department, put into the chat box, if anyone's interested in doing a climate action plan, please contact me. And so I thought, well, why not? Sounds good. So I contacted him. And he wanted to set up a meeting. And so I asked Mayor Kerr to join, and we were talking, and really what came out is that, even before we do a climate action plan, you really need to do a general plan update. And so, which is what I really, I would also prefer that as well, because I feel like there's elements of our general plan that are not there. I know we're supposed to be talking about climate change within the safety element. We don't have that. And so it just sort of started from there. And this has been in my council reports all along. So if you had read my council reports, you would have seen that. And we've talked about this before. And I know how important it is to include Denise Duffy, and I agree with that. I want her to also be a part of that as well. And so the reason why I think they put me as a technical representative is just because I contacted them. And so they know that the mayor is the mayor, and I was the other person. And so I ended up in that role. If you'd like the city manager in that role, I'm totally fine with that. I don't need to be the person on there. I just happened to be the one who reached out to that professor. And so I feel comfortable reaching out to universities, and I know that they have a lot to offer. John, in terms of their scope, I would imagine as an instructor, you'd have to cover a certain amount of curriculum within your class. And so that scope probably fits their curriculum. And so I would imagine those are all the things they're learning. I can't imagine wanting less. I think, more is always better. And again, with Denise Duffy serving as like the person who will be there to review the outcome and help guide us in that. So I'm not trying to discount Denise Duffy in this process. I want her in it. And so I'm grateful that she's willing to look into this for us, because I do think this could be really cost effective. If we go this route. And again, this is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. So sorry, that's my long-winded answer to your question, Ms. Lintel.
Give me an answer for the responsibilities of being a technical representative.
I don't know where they are, honestly. I think he just put my name there because I was the one who contacted them. We can put the city manager's name in there. I'm fine with that.
You agreed to be the technical representative, even though you didn't know the responsibilities.
I didn't ask for it. This was a draft contract, and they had our 2 names, and they put our 2 names on there. So it's a draft. It could be whatever you like.
Okay, so I'd like to reiterate that Denise has the experience, and not only the experience of doing this type work, but she has worked for us previously. And I just like to see a professional at least lead the contract. In the contract says nothing about Denise Duffy in it. And so I can't understand that if you feel so strongly about having Denise as a part of this, that she's not in it. By the way, thanks for being here, Denise. I appreciate it. Anyway, those are my feelings. So let us go out to the public. Does the public?
So Pat, I am back and I would like to make some comments. Thank you for taking over. I'm sorry, my internet went. Updating the general plan has been one of our strategic goals for at least 6 years. This is the first time I was at the meeting with Kim when we saw all of this, and we jumped on it. It seemed like a very cost-effective, pennies on the dollar to a normal general plan. It makes sense. They like small cities. They have a schedule. They have an outline. They work regularly with planning staff in all cities. The reason we brought this draft contract is to have a discussion about it and see what may need to be changed. Maybe Denise is the technical contact. There's work to be done, not only from Denise's part to make sure she's comfortable, and I trust her judgment to be able to come to us and say, this will work or this won't, or let's look at it this way. It was never, Kim and I were not doing anything behind the scenes other than trying to find as much information as possible. And then we set up meetings with Denise and with Alex and with Jeff. And now we're bringing it to the council. So my question to Denise is, how is the process that is currently outlined in the contract, how is that different than what you would do?
Well, I mean, typically, if this were any planning consultant, it's not between me and the Cal Poly. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because there's nothing on the table for that. But typically, what you would have in an entire process, if you're going to go out for a planning consultant to do this type of work, is that you'd submit RFP and circulate that, and then they would prepare a pretty detailed scope of work with product delivery dates, schedules, etc., and all the like. So I think the thing that differs from my standpoint, and like Alex said, if we were going to go forward on this, we're prepared to work with them on the contract and work some of these issues out. But the difference I see is that the level of detail is less than that you get in a professional scope of work. And it's also just it is completely tailored to the process that they have done for 16 years that I explained to you up front. So it is their program that they have got it set up. And I think, like Councilman Shirley said, it's probably specific to their learning outcomes, but it also provides, all of the key elements that you would have in a general plan. It does create all of those outcomes. And so that's the major difference I can see. Alex, maybe do you see anything? Also, the price is lower.
The attached to the agreement is the scope of work there. So, one thing you could do is compare that from, a scope of work that you would be provided by a Denise Duffy or something along those lines.
I did go look through a scope of work for 2 consultants that were going through Simpler City just really recently. And so I think those could also be available. They're public. And you could use those to, excuse me for answering without through the mayor, but we can use those to sort of see whether or not we explored different options today about the flexibility of, could you do this as well? Could you do this as well? And, it was an hour or so more conversation. We would need to do a little more of that.
So the reason we're having a special meeting in addition to the closed session is so we could have this conversation and have Denise and Alex go out and do any further investigation on the contract, on the scope, on all of that. Denise, do you see what I heard was the level of detail for the scope. Could that be fleshed out?
It would really depend upon Cal Poly and the professor. I think that they feel that this scope is adequate. It's been used in this contract for many times, and I couldn't answer that for them.
Okay. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have an estimate of how much a full general plan update would from anyone else?
No, it would depend upon the city. It's obviously going to be greater than $40,000. It would depend upon the city, the issues, what base level they want. It depends on the specific scope of work, what they're offering, the number of outreach items. It's really so dependent. You can't just, identify a shot in the dark to be able to say what it would cost.
Okay. So last I heard, Seaside was up to about 1.2 million. Is that?
It wouldn't cost that much for Del Oaks.
Okay.
I know that. I did look at a couple with small cities and recently, but they had a lot of base data already done. And it was, 150 for the inventory and the general plan. So, I mean, the value of this is obviously to get a whole full inventory and a general plan for $40,000 is really a good deal. The downside, I guess, is it an implementable, usable document at the end? And will it withstand challenge? And I think that's the legal question that, it's also very important for our peninsula cities. The other cities may not have had as much specific issues related to development, water, and all of the other things in our area.
Right. Okay. So let's go out to the public.
Mayor, since you're back, I have one more question.
Okay.
Why are you rushing this so much? It seems to me that something so important, we really need to analyze it and take our time and maybe review it, and maybe in 6 months or a year. But you're pushing it to happen right now. And why is that?
Well, it's the academic school timing. And we're also in the middle of a process of pushing forward development. I would like to see the general plan done before we push forward with development, so we have all the parameters. So I would like to do it this year rather than next, because as Denise described, it would take, it sounded like between 2 and 3 years to accomplish. So that's why.
Through the mayor, I'd like to actually ask a question. Denise, would you confirm that these do not have to be serial processes. These can be parallel processes. You can develop special plans as well as a general plan while you're also engaging in early stage development activities.
Right, you can. There's a baseline that if you're talking about, can you do a CEQA document at the same time that you're embarking upon your general plan? Okay, so the answer to that is yes. You usually have your base setting analysis done, understand your project description, and then the ideal thing is if you can have a general plan and an EIR out at the same time.
Yeah.
Because the public can see both at the same time.
Right,
you need
exactly.
a solid, project descriptions, a linchpin of CEQA,
Right,
so you want to
exactly.
understand
Everything.
what your project is and bracket those.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could reduce that time frame if needed.
I just wanted to kind of maybe touch on both the concerns. Like, I understand the immediate. Well, I understand the necessity to get on this, this general plan amendment, but that does not necessarily have to be tied to exactly as much as the narrative has been out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to any development that we're doing. We can do these in tandem with each other, and they can be incorporated. They do not have to be serial, one after the other, and also too, they don't have to be all encompassing. We can do a special plan. There are plenty of other jurisdictions. I do a lot of work in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz has general plan overlays all over the place because they recognize that doing a full-blown general plan would basically bring the entire county or bring everything to a standstill. So that fits for us too. We could do a special general plan update that's very, very specific to Fort Ord, and that may be probably one of the best efforts, because there are things that we're going to come in contact with out at Fort Ord that we wouldn't in the historic kind of city boundaries, and they just need that additional review. So I mean, there's just many ways to do this. There isn't just one way to do this, and I am concerned about the defensibility, just knowing, because I've developed in this county and Santa Cruz and everything, the defensibility of our general plan. And that's exactly why I totally want Denise Duffy there, because I think Denise has probably been sued more than everybody. Well, her projects have been sued, and they've stood. My project got sued, and because of the work that Denise did, I prevailed. And so that's, and I want basically that same rigor and that same defensibility that only experience can provide you. So, and I'm willing to pay for it. I mean, I think the cities should be willing to pay for it.
Okay, Kim?
And tell us more.
Yeah, I just feel like we need, I feel like we need to remember, if we're learning anything from FORTAG, we need to reach out to the residents before we start big development plans. And so I feel like this is the opportunity to come in and talk to our residents and find out what they want in terms of Fort Ord, in terms of our city as a whole. I mean, why wouldn't we jump on this chance to have that visioning, those focus groups, the survey done? I mean, for me, we're getting this at a very reasonable cost. We're going to get some really valuable information out of it. We've got an engaged, electorate. Like, let's harness this opportunity and look into it further. And again, with Denise Duffy's guidance and Alex's, ability to look over the contract, I just feel like, for me, this just seems like a no-brainer. Like, we should just move forward, because as a council, we have never talked about a general plan update formally, engaging, putting out an RFP. We have never talked about that before. No one had. We have it on our strategic plan, but yeah, it just sits there, right? This is an opportunity for us to act and to talk to our residents, again, at a reasonable price. And I think I just want to say I think it's a great opportunity. So I just need to say that.
Can I respond to that? I think that's, I agree with a lot of what Kim has said. But I will just point, in terms of the all of those scoping effort, all those scoping tasks can be incorporated in the work that Denise would basically be putting together in a scope. When we put out an RFP, that stuff can be put into it. That's exactly what we would kind of need. The difference is Denise and David Zender are going to be coming from the perspective of they know the city, they know the needs of this city, and where Cal Poly, the students at Cal Poly may not. And so proposing alternatives to a community and saying, hey, you know, we could do this, you know, have you guys thought of doing something of that? You could be proposing something that would not actually work for the city in terms of just our fiscal needs. And that's where the qualifying, that's where the Robin Zender efforts that they're doing right now and Denise Duffy's efforts that are doing right now would help frame that scope. And that's why, I mean, I just think that that professor has been doing this for 16 years. He's got basically a curriculum. I know he's very, very good at what he does. I've looked him up, but he's giving you his secret sauce. That's what he thinks we need. And, you know, we have spent a great expense. I mean, over $100,000 in the last couple of years for Robin Zender or David Zender and Denise, to give us a strategic direction on kind of where we need to basically be driving the city in order for us to be fiscally sustainable. That's a very, very important that's a very important question. And so I think that should not be done in a vendor. But I appreciate everything that you said, and I totally agree with that. Or totally agree with you know, a lot of what you said.
Thank you, John. I just want to say that fiscal responsibility and making sure we've had that discussion with these professors. They know that's what a town is looking for. And so in their contract, in their scope of work, they're looking at other cities to see what other cities are doing. I mean, they're looking to see when looking at our land and seeing what's available, they're going to understand it. And you know, I know, yes, we have Denise Duffy, we have David Zender, but we haven't pushed them to do the same kind of outreach that we would get from these folks. And so I think, you know, having Denise Duffy and David Zender and these, you know, students coming in and doing their own research, it just makes it, I think, you know, it's more, it gives us more information, and it allows us to make a better decision. And I think it also gives our residents more opportunities to speak. So
I totally agree.
So let's go out to the public. We can come back to the council in a minute, but let's hear what the public has to say. Jim Clark.
Unmute. There we go. Bring up my thing. Hi, Mayor Kerr, Council Member Shirley, Jim Clark, Delray Oaks. College students updating the general plan. Yep, that's right. Those two are proposing that we hire children in their 19 through 21 ages to update our general plan. It seems to me they are continuing to do everything within their power to prevent for as long as they can, using any process they can, to keep us from developing the corridor 360 acres. I object to this for the following reasons. First, they are proposing that no plans even begin and no developer even be talked to until the general plan has been updated. And as had been pointed out by Councilman Gagliotti, those two things can happen at the same time. Second, it is reasonable to presume that hiring people of that age group, you stand a really good chance of, number one, getting people with absolutely no experience in long-term planning, even though the teacher's done it for 16 years, you're getting a fresh set of students every time. Two, they're all concerned with environmental issues with no balance of the needs of the city for tax income.
Jim, your connection is pretty bad, and we've missed about the last 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think we just lost.
It seems again the goal is to stall.
Jim, we're unable to hear you.
the pricing for all building material goes up. And then they will
Jim, we're unable, Jim, we're unable to hear you. And we've heard about the first 15 seconds.
Yes.
Maybe we can come back. Mayor.
Yeah. So Jim, I'm going to mute you and I'm going to move back and hopefully you, the connectivity can correct itself.
No, stop.
Yeah.
Karen, I'm unable to mute
Many
him.
developers are completely frustrated with DRO's inability to even entertain a proposal.
Randy, can you
to
mute
enter
Jim
into an
Clark,
agreement
please?
and take their talent elsewhere.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll come back to him when he comes back. Bill Ragsdale Cronin.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Bill Ragsdale Cronin, Carlton Drive. So a couple of points I wanted to make. I think one of my questions got answered already. Why not use students? Why not use the people who are on the forefront of the new and improved planning going forward? Why not use the people that theoretically in our city would be living with a general plan? These people are, you know, they're graduates and undergraduates, so they maybe would do an excellent job. Secondly, whatever they do, if it's $40,000 or $50,000, most likely will be reviewed by Denise Duffy and her crew. It's not shoved down the city's throat. The city council gets to decide what to do with it after we receive it. If it's nothing but drivel, we reject it and go out and do a real plan. We're 1.2 some million dollars in the hole for mistakes other city council people have made with development in the Fort Ord area. 40,000 seems pretty cheap to find out maybe we can do it right this time around. And the last thing I really want to say is I've heard children used a number of times. These are not children. They're young adults, and it's denigrating and disrespectful to them. And I would urge anyone that wants to say we have children doing something with our general plan to stop doing it. These are young adults that have made it to college and are trying to improve themselves, and they deserve the respect to being at least referred to as young adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrice Vecchione.
I am Patrice Vecchione, and I really agree with what Bill said, referring to the children. They're not children, they're young adults, and they need to be referred to in that manner. Children are people who are not going to college. I was not a child when I went to college. And the larger point I want to make is that, to me, and other people I've spoken with in Delray Oaks, it does not make sense to consider development without a general plan. It would be like building a house without blueprints. We need to know what the people, the residents, the citizens of Delray Oaks, what we want to see for development before anything in that regard is considered. So I encourage the council to take advantage of this very smart opportunity and move forward with it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, Jim, let's try this again. Jim? Karen, can you, or Randy, can you unmute him? I don't know what the issue is.
Hey, Randy, can you unmute Jim Clark?
Yeah, it's not letting me.
Okay.
Okay. So So, okay. So what I'd like to do is come back to the council. If Jim comes back and we can hear him, we can listen to him at that point. But I'd like to come back to the council. Vice Mayor Lintel, any other questions, comments?
Yes, you mentioned the academic year was pushing this forward, and why is that?
Well, because according to the contract, they would start in September. The contract would be from September 15th until next year, September.
But what is the rush for that? Why not start it for the following September or the following January?
Well, that's what we're discussing. I don't know if they will have the ability to take us on in a year, but that's always an option.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gagliotti.
Yeah, first of all, I want to appreciate both the mayor and Kim for explaining kind of the genesis and how we got here. Is that when we saw it last week, I mean, I knew it was coming because Kim, you had basically, I mean, I knew you were talking to Cal Poly, and I knew this was coming, but I was a little taken back by the scope and how atomic it was. I mean, it was more than just assisting whoever we might have. It was doing the whole thing. So that was a little more than I was anticipated. And then of course it was more expensive than my expectations had been set. So, and I'm thank you for at least, explaining kind of how it started. It's, I understand that. My biggest thing is I really want to, I want them to work on this. I do like that idea. But I want them to work under our direction. I don't want them to just go off and do what they do. I think we're actually a bigger city than almost all those other cities that were described. I think that we've got a much bigger complex issue facing us, which is the development of Fort Ord. And I really do think that our staff understands that better than anybody. And I really want them to be directing that effort and whatever they're scoping and how they're going to kind of capture the information they're going to need. So that's the biggest thing I would have in that contract is that in that contract it explicitly would say that the efforts will be supporting our staff, and then I want it driven by our new city manager. I think that that's really, really important. That I think that our new city manager, assuming that they assuming that happens, I really do think they should be driving this effort because they would be the point of contact. And so those are my only two kind of things. And I do recognize, maybe both of those things could happen before September. And if that's the case, then that's great. But I would expect that this contract would be revised with those points, and that our city manager would be involved, or the new city manager would be involved. But I like the concept. I really, really like the concept. If I were a Cal Poly, when you're in Cal Poly, you're always looking for a real world experience. And this is it, this is going to be trial by fire, so this will be, I think, one of their more complex projects that they ever did, that they would have worked on, just because of all the complexities that's out of Fort Ord. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks. Councilman Donaldson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I too find a lot of goodness with this. I see that the students could be very helpful in this process, but I do agree that we should have the city manager on board to provide that direction and allow enough time for not only the city manager to get a perspective on what needs to happen, but also making sure that our planning staff know what that direction is and what they need to do to support that. But at the end of the day, I think it's fantastic. I think there's a place for them within this process where it'll be very helpful, and it definitely has financial, physical benefit to it. So, just to reiterate what I said before, all those points are important. And the other points about the public outreach and talking to residents, absolutely. As much as we can do that, I completely agree that that needs to happen. But as far as the process goes, I think we can do it in that parallel fashion where you do have specific plans that can move projects forward, that we can do that and work in parallel as the city manager orchestrates the update with the students and with the planning staff. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Shirley.
Well, I am in favor of moving forward with this. I think fiscally it's a good thing. I think we would get a lot out of it. And again, I think having our new city manager on board is a good thing too. You know, that's important. I want everyone on board with this as we move forward. And I am a little unclear how we can move forward with development in terms of like actual coming up with things when we're still talking to residents about what they want. I don't know, maybe we can. Again, I've never been through this, but I think it's something that we need to explore this further. So I'm on board, obviously.
Pat, did you have something?
Yes, I would like to reiterate that I think we need more time, and I'm definitely in favor of what Scott and John have proposed. I think it all makes sense, and to have Denise Duffy as primary and everybody working under Denise would be my choice in order to get a general plan that we can use. It could be that after spending the $40,000+, we end up with nothing we can use. And so that's that money down the drain, which could be applied to having a professional work on it. And thank you very much.
So I think this phone number is Jim. If that is, please, now is your time.
Okay. Boy, that was an interesting
right.
challenge. Thank you so much for your flexibility and letting me get back in, and I'll try to cut to all the key points here. I guess number one is I'm not particularly thrilled with this, and I'm not particularly thrilled with the idea because number one, you're dealing with a bunch of people that have no idea of long-term planning. They could very well be concerned with environmental issues, which is fine, but have no balance of the needs of the city for tax income and housing. And if we can continue to stall, what are we going to do? Stall until the pricing for building material goes up, and then we're going to complain about that and use that as another excuse to not build? Or are we going to stall until developers are completely frustrated with Delray Oaks' inability to even entertain a proposal, to entertain an agreement, and then take their talent elsewhere? This example of the city saving lots of money on this. Well, if that's the case, what's the next step going to be? We're going to hire a college class to actually put together the actual development under the guidance of a general contractor, of course. There's been all these arguments about our general plan needing to be updated and everybody wringing their hands about how out of date it is. Well, I did some actual checking. Do you know that Monterey and Marinas is only 8 years younger? Carmel's 6. Marina is the most up to date. It's already 11 years old. PG, King City are only 1 year younger than ours, and Aptos, Soquel are 3 years older than ours. So to have all this hand-wringing over the fact of how old our city general plan is not dealing with the reality of things. Guidance for what we're going to do in Fort Worth, that's already been developed when Jack Barlich, I believe, was the mayor. And I kind of browsed through it and I saw maps for what we were supposed to do on page 30 and 31. And then I know we already had a developer that proposed to stuff that went through tons of city hearings and what the citizens want to see up there. And then I think the last idea that I want to present, if I can get my Word document back up to there, is if you're willing to trust your individual car to the CSUMD auto shop for repair, or you're willing to have their architectural class build the plans for your custom home, or you're willing to have a 20-year-old be your physician, good for you. But even if you are one of those, and I would hope you are if you're willing to risk our city's general plan on them, I am not one of those. And then there's the legal aspect out of it. I don't know if Denise is willing to put her company on the line for a work done by some professor and a whole bunch of college students. Thank you so much for letting me get back in.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. Let's come back to the council. Ms. Shirley. You're muted.
Sorry. I just want to talk to Denise and get her perspective, and Alex too. Did you get the sense that we would be able to wait a little bit on this and get our city manager on board? Do you sense a timeline for Cal Poly in terms of when they need our answer?
Today, when we had a Zoom meeting with the professor, it was sooner the better. I think he said ideally by the end of July is when they would have something there. I don't know if they would be willing to extend that if need be.
And Denise, are you willing to oversee this project if we were to move forward with Cal Poly doing our general plan update?
I want to make it work for the city, and I'll do anything I can to do that. I would have to, and Alex and Jeff, you're on the phone. I'd have to see if that's part of their program. I mean, I know that in looking at other general plans that they've had the planning staff, and we are, are essentially planning staff, have been a part of the process. I don't know that there is the opportunity to be the program manager for it. And I think that's what you're asking. But we can certainly explore that. I'd be willing to do it, and if it can work out. Alex, did you get that same impression? I just felt it was kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're discussing here, having Denise be the lead, and just based on, I've only met the professor once, and that was today. We would have to do some modifications to the contract to sort of say, essentially, to get with Denise and get with Cal Poly, and where that handshake happens, I could then draft in the agreement. The agreement that I reviewed today was much more broad. I think we would have to tweak the scope of work to say, this is your responsibility, this is our responsibility, so it was clear.
And
Go ahead, Denise.
The thing that I would really want to have everybody clear on is what the time frame would that be, and what the cost to the city it would be, because it would certainly add to that $40,000 estimate. I mean, we had assumed that we're going to be doing some consultation back and forth and assistance, but we really would have to scope it out a little bit more in order to directly answer your question.
That is my point, is that there needs to be a scoping effort, and I really do think this is where the new city manager and Denise need to basically say, okay, look, and David Zender. I was going to say Robin Zender, and that's the singer for Cheap Trick, but and that's a dated. I don't know how many people are going to get that.
That ages you.
Anyway, I lost my complete train. I really do think that Denise, the new city manager, and David need to be kind of setting what the scope is. I mean, I don't think it needs to be maybe 40K, but there are some things that I think that would be, I think, interesting that they would be bringing to the table that would be nice adds. But definitely, I mean, it would be certainly nice if they could do not the survey. Denise, what is it? The
land survey.
Yeah, the
land survey, baseline inventory. So you have
inventory, the baseline inventory. I mean, that's just it. I mean, that's largely an administrative task, and if we can get those guys to do that, I think that would be very helpsul. So anyway,
just a minute, Scott. What I would suggest is we're not making a decision whether we're going forward or not today. The idea was to have this discussion. What I would like to suggest is that we ask Denise, Alex, and Jeff to do, Denise has phone calls out. Let's see what comes back from those. Perhaps another conversation or two with Cornelius about the roles and how that can factor in, and how a legal document may be shifted to reflect that. we will, our city manager will be starting the kind of the middle of August. So that gives us a little time. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, what I was going to add to it is, I think it's absolutely critical that you have one individual that can coordinate and synchronize all these efforts, because in a lot of cases, you'll have individuals or entities that are out there that are doing their own coordination. And ultimately, when you come back and say, hey, here's exactly what we want to do, there is a lot of wasted work and wasted coordination that has happened because individuals have been going directly to other agencies or whatever it may be. So I want to avoid that. I think it's absolutely critical that we get the new city manager on board so that person can be the one to coordinate and synchronize those efforts, to answer questions like Denise had, like what's the timeline and what's the cost, or how much cost can we bear as a city, and provide that guidance so that we don't have to redo work. I think that's a critical piece of it.
Pat?
Yeah, I agree with that. And if he's coming on, or she coming on board in August, middle of August, you say? Is that true?
That's what we're aiming for.
Okay, so we have to give that person some time to get acquainted with the city. So it sounds to me like we're talking about the first of the year to bring this back to the city council.
Ms. Shirley?
Yeah, I feel like we need to have, I mean, I think there's enough good work that could be had from this if we move forward with it. And so I would encourage our staff to move forward into looking at a contract that we can get, that we can sign and start in September. I think, why not?
Is that a motion?
Yeah, that's my motion.
Could you make it in a motion format?
Sure. I move that we have our staff, so would include Denise Duffy, Alex, and Jeff, coordinate with Cal Poly to gather a contract that we can then review as a council again, and with the current timeline that's attached to the draft contract.
Okay, I second. Any comments before we take a vote?
Yeah, once again.
I mean, go ahead. Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay,
Scott.
once again, I am very concerned. I mean, like I said before, I think there is a lot of goodness with what we're trying to do here, and I think it makes sense to do it. But because of the magnitude of this project, not having that single person that, like I said, can coordinate and synchronize all these things that need to happen, I think we're asking for trouble there. And until that's in place, I see potential inefficiencies and work that has to be redone, and maybe a hit on a monetary hit, that maybe we pull together a bunch of things and a lot of work has been done that ultimately doesn't end up being useful. So that's my main concern. I like this concept. I think, like I said, there's a lot of goodness there, but I'm worried about those issues of not having someone that can coordinate and synchronize.
Okay.
I echo exactly what Scott said, and the thing that's really kind of bugging me is that the vendor is driving our schedule, and we're not basically driving the vendor schedule. I would like to know in this discussions with Professor Cornelius, I mean, what's his flexibility? What's in working with us on that? If asked tonight to vote to put together to scramble and get a contract in place with these guys just so we can make their timeline, I can't support that because I definitely think that there's we've got staffing, we've got a new city manager that's coming on, and then I think there is a scoping effort that needs to happen. And like Scott said, and like I think all of us are all agree, we would like, I really want Cal Poly involved in this for a lot of reasons, but we're not ready for September. We might be ready in October. If we could make it, we could make it, but I would like some flexibility on the vendor side to say, let's let's refine this scope and define who's actually doing what. And again, this may be totally different. And that's, to me, almost a gating question to Professor Cornelius. Is he willing and ready to be directed by our city manager and our staff? I mean, are they willing? Is that acceptable? Is that an acceptable contract term for them? And if we don't have that, then if he says no, then we're kind of done, at that point, because that I won't support anything that's not driven by us. So I don't know where that kind of puts your motion, Kim, and I don't know how to modify it, but I understand what you want to do, and I want to support that, but the cramming their schedule down our throats is not going to get it. I can't get that.
Well, I think, first of all, I want to say we have very competent staff right now. So we have an acting city manager, we've got Denise Duffy, we've got Alex. We have very competent people who can organize this until our new new city manager comes on board. So I'm not worried in the least bit for that. I think in the contract, and Alex, you might be able to clarify this, but it seems in the contract when they start work, if at some point we feel like it's not working for us, we can essentially leave the contract and we'll owe them for the work that they've done up until that point. And then, right. And then we are free and clear. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. There's the city under the proposed agreement can terminate without cause at its pleasure.
So given that out, and given the amount of money we're going to save by engaging in this work, believing in the staff that we currently have, and knowing that there'll be a smooth transition to a new city manager, I feel absolutely confident that we can move forward with this. And again, we're just voting to get more information, and then we can finalize the contract. But again, as a teacher, I know what it's like to plan, and I understand that he'd want to know that he's got a city in place to move forward with.
The vote didn't sound as though the vote sounded like we're directing staff to finalize a contract. That's what it sounded like. Is that to come to terms, have Alex basically draft a contract with, and at that point, it's a foregone conclusion that we're going down the road with them. And I still kind of want to hold out a scoping effort. And I do feel that while we do have a great a great staff, the new city manager has skills that are very, very specific to this work and very, very specific on the Fort Ord properties. And I definitely want that person, that city manager's expertise brought to bear when this scoping effort is done. That's why I think it's important that that person is involved in the scoping effort. I don't want to kill this. I mean, I totally want to move this forward, but can we maybe temper this and say, look, let's direct staff to continue the discussion. And first, to me, the biggest gating question is whether or not how much governance, how much control Professor Cornelius is willing to kind of abdicate to our staff. I mean, I'm like, if I understand it correctly, he's going to be running a class, right? So first quarter, you're going to be doing this, and you're going to kind of, and he's going to go through that. I imagine this is probably a 400 level class, right? I mean, this is a senior class, senior level class, right? Yeah. So this is kind of almost a capstone or project-based class.
Yes.
So.
Or graduate.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is and so I totally understand that. And that may having basically act as a consultant more than as it may be a different relationship that it might not work. So that to me is a gating question. We got to know that. So that's where, I mean, is there any, well, look, the 27th is coming. I mean, can we pick this back up? Can we basically give staff kind of some kind of information gathering questions and then come back and make maybe a go, no go decision or a next decision? It's
a matter of gathering the information, and Denise is already starting it, and Alex can continue. And but it's looking at how we move forward. And then when the next city manager begins, there's information to provide, right? Rather than starting at that point and moving forward. And this person will be able to come in and say, yay, nay, this, that, right? And then we vote, and we vote one way or the other.
Well, but the scope is what's going to be defined in the, I mean, it'll be an exhibit that's attached to this contract. And so that's, to me, is the biggest, that's the biggest thing, is the scope. For
So
our
John,
own
are you-
staff, the current scope is deficient, right? And there needs to be more.
Well, Denise, can you clarify? Do you feel it is deficient?
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I think the question that was raised to me specifically was, how does this differ from another scope of work for what I've typically seen of what we've written, what we've done? And the difference is it's lighter, it's specific to the class, etc., and it doesn't have the same depth that you would get in a scope of work from that that I've reviewed before. I don't know, so I think that's exactly what I said. I hope that was clear.
So Denise, I have a question for you. Do you feel, let's say we were to get this body of work, and we would have this body of work, but you in your advisement feel that we need something that's a little bit more in depth. Would what they provide benefit your work in some way? Would it reduce the costs? Would it hinder your work? Can you tell me how that might dovetail with your work if we said, okay, we need a little bit more in this area? Denise, can you do that for us?
Well, the first semester, the first portion of the work that they've got under their syllabus and their scope is the land use inventory. So all of that is basic information that's needed no matter who does the document and who does the policy directives, et cetera, the land use designations. So that's a real absolute benefit to any professional that's going to be doing it, or if it's done through Cal Poly, because that's one piece of information that's done by the end of December, and it's basically environmental setting, physical setting within each of the components of that thing. So yes, that's a very specific, very beneficial work product. And the other, I think the rest of the question is, it just depends on what, I haven't read the scope of work to that level of detail to know what the next steps are. As we went through it and discussed it earlier, presented it earlier today, and we discussed with Professor, with Cornelius, the next portion of it is really looking at the different alternatives, them coming back and actually doing their own work a little bit, essentially, and then coming back, parroting back what was said at the meetings, etc. And that would also provide a basis to move forward from as well. So
Is that second quarter? Is that second quarter? I mean,
that is from, it's both winter and spring, because I think in the springtime what they do is they actually draft and write the document, and in wintertime they're doing more analysis or discussion and presentation of alternatives. If I remember, Alex, please correct me if I'm wrong from my memory on that.
Yeah, I'd have to check the scope. Yeah.
I just want to come back to the one thing. I mean, can the professor accept the relationship with the city's driving it? Where either our city manager or Denise Duffy is driving this, is basically dictating what the students will be doing. I definitely think that the first task is pretty rote. I mean, and that would be a benefit to have done. But the minute that they begin to kind of explore alternatives, in a vacuum, that's where things can go absolutely awry. And that's where that professor would basically have to be accepting, that's something that we need. There needs to be this layer of the work that we've already done right now that we're having you and David work on. And so that's where.
John, this is a public process, right? So we're going to be involved in it. So I think, again, $40,000 worth it for them to come up with alternatives that maybe we say, no, we don't want it at all. I think $40,000 is a bargain for this. And again, it's a public process. So our public will be involved, we'll be involved, our planning commission will be involved. So there's plenty of opportunity. So I don't necessarily feel that Denise has to drive it necessarily. I want her.
That's
I
a
want her
problem. That's a
overview.
real problem. I can.
Well, because if as an instructor, I can't have someone come in. John, just a minute, I'm not finished.
Sorry.
As an instructor, he has his obligations. And so
Right.
that's the trade-off, right? For getting something, for paying less. That's the
Right.
trade-off, is that he
Right.
has to complete his curriculum. Now,
Exactly.
at the end of that curriculum, right, we're going to have Denise review it. And so I'm comfortable with that. So that's,
I know, and I get it. I get it. And I'm coming at it from the point of a developer, and you're coming at it from the point of an academician, and I can totally see why that would seem totally reasonable. But from a developer's point of view, it's not reasonable. And I basically want that control. I want our city to have that kind of control over scope.
okay, so are you willing to tell me then, if we lose this opportunity, are you willing to engage in the same type of scoping? Focus groups, survey, visioning,
yes.
complete land use inventory. You're willing to engage in that this fiscal year?
Yes. Yeah. It has to be done. It's got to be done. But where's the scope need? Where's the focus of the scope? Is the scope? There's another gating question here. Is do we want to do basically a special general plan overlay just for Fort Ord properties, or just for the Fort Ord areas? I know the mayor's shaking your head, but that actually may be the best use of our money because of some of the detailed items that we would be able to deep dive into. So, and I don't know, that is to me another general plan update or another general plan amendment option, which we've not explored. We've not had basically a broader scoping discussion on where we're going to be focusing our planning efforts.
This developing Fort Ord would double the size of our city. This would make a huge change. We need to look at this in a holistic manner. And again, we need to talk to our residents.
It's not going to change anything. We're not going to put one more parcel of land or have one more acre foot of water dedicated to Fort Ord or dedicated to our existing city boundary. This is happening. This is not only doubling the size of our city, it's changing our city, meaning that it's another city. So why not then our planning effort focus specifically on that? That's what I'm saying. There's nothing more to do within the confines of our existing city. We have one available lot, which doesn't have any water.
But we also talk about moving the light industrial out to Fort Ord. Why wouldn't we go forward with a full general plan update?
It doesn't have to be in the general plan amendment. That doesn't. We can basically just make that home for them. Look, it's all got to be driven by finance. All of those properties that are owned down on that road are private. So they have to be encouraged to go there.
Yeah.
So that's what you do is you create the environment, you create the opportunity for them to go there, and they'll go there. And if they become vacant, then that's when we within our city, within our own planning, can basically say, hey, now we want to change that area and make it into similar to what they did with Broadway. They didn't need to do a full general plan amendment to change what the ordinances for developing on Broadway. And, Jim kind of pointed out, look at all the development that's happened, all the good development that's happened in Marina, that Marina is benefiting from, and they've got an 11-year-old general plan. The general plan that they're developing under is not the general plan that they wrote 11 years ago. So I don't see the lockstep that we need a general plan before we do anything, because the development process is also, it is a very public process, certainly in California. You don't go, as much as everyone kind of accuses elected officials of doing backroom deals and everything, it doesn't happen. Not in California. It certainly happens in Arizona, but it doesn't happen in California. And certainly it doesn't happen in Monterey County. As much as and even worse, it doesn't happen on the peninsula. It is a very, very, very excruciatingly public process that has to be gone through, whether you have a general plan or not.
John, let's hear from Pat.
Yes, if we went John's route to just update that one ordinance, excuse me, that $40,000 would be a big step toward that and would alleviate any of the immediacy of updating the whole general plan one fell swoop. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Mayor.
Yes.
I have a comment. So I think getting back to John's points, I think it's critical that we go back to Cal Poly Corporation and ask them if they can work under city leadership, like he explained, and also find out from them what their suspense is, because a lot of it could be a moot point. They might come back to us and say, we will not work under the direction of a city manager or a planning staff or whatever it is, or they need an answer right now, and it might be a moot point. So I think those two things are critical questions that we can ask now. I think that needs to happen. And yeah, it's a bargain. It's 40,000 is a bargain. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean that we just throw it away. We got to be smart with it. And I think those are absolutely critical questions to ask from the beginning. And without leadership and someone driving this process and coordinating and synchronizing, I think we run the risk of just wasted effort, wasted resources, maybe wasted money. And I absolutely agree with the proficiency of our staff and the quality of our staff right now. But having come from an organization that changes leaders all the time, when you get a new leader, it changes a lot of what goes on within that organization. So that's what I wanted to pass along, and maybe we can craft a motion that kind of captures that.
Kim, do you want to shift your motion at all? Add anything?
Karen, can you read back? Can anyone give me so we all know what we're talking about here, exactly what the motion is?
Give me just a minute. Well, at that point I wrote tape, which means I have to go back and listen to it.
Okay. Okay. So, okay.
Staff to coordinate the contract with Cal Poly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's worth looking into. And I think that's what we're doing right now, is we're looking into it. We've expressed what we want, but it's at this point, Denise and Alex will come back to us and say, no, they're going to do their own thing, and this is their timeline, take it or leave it. And then we can make that decision. But I think we need to understand what the parameters are. And so I'm hoping within that motion, that's what we'll understand. Denise, yeah, go ahead.
I just had a question because I was rereading what I wrote for your motion, which was, and I think I have the gist of Alex, and I will go back and with Jeff and look into more information. Can they work under city management? What is their timing? Do they have flexibility in their scope? What's more specificity of what's included? But I think your motion also said to review within the current timeline. So maybe we can go back and ask them what their timeline is.
Yes.
What's included, and with Alex's help, look more to what they will accept and what they won't. Does it, because I think there was a question today too in terms of their expectation is for the full year plus the second year for the EIR. And if that's the case, then we need to understand that too, because it's a different cost differential than we've been discussing.
Yeah, I think you can include all that in my motion, that you're looking into all that.
So Karen, are you clear on the motion? What I'm hearing?
Can I make a recommendation? Kim, why don't you just make a
new motion?
Yeah, and I forget what the term is I guess expunge remove the old motion and just make a new
Withdraw.
one. But yeah,
Okay,
withdraw.
I'll withdraw my old motion
Okay,
and I'll make a new motion
okay.
and have Denise and Alex and Jeff clarify with Cal Poly what their timeline is, how flexible their scope is, and timeline in terms of when they need to know, their scope and
Direction.
and yeah, direction. Yeah.
I second.
Yeah, okay, I can support this.
And so, is there, so are we asking them to bring it back at the end of July? That data?
Yes, yes, I think, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
At the July City Council meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
for the July meeting. So with no further comments, Denise, Alex, Jeff? No?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm happy
Completely
to take
clear,
your
Mayor.
run and bring something back to you. Absolutely.
Okay. Karen, can you do a vote, please?
Councilmember Shirley,
Aye.
Councilmember Donaldson,
Aye.
Councilmember Gagliotti,
Aye.
Councilmember Lintel,
Aye.
Mayor Kerr.
Aye. So it passes unanimously. All right, so we'll have some more work to do at the end of July. And on that note, thank you for the conversation. On that note, we're going to move into closed session. Is there any public comment on the closed session item, conference with legal counsel, public employee appointment? I am seeing no hands. So what we're going to do is move into a breakout session and then we will come back and report out. You're welcome to stay. Otherwise, our next meeting is Tuesday, July 27, 2021 at 6 p.m. So on that note, we will see you in a bit. Thank you for hanging out. Mr. Lorca, could you please report out?
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to the one closed session item, council went into closed session under the personnel exception to discuss appointment of city manager. No reportable action was taken.
Okay, on that, our next meeting date is Tuesday, July 27, 2021 at 6 p.m. On that, we're adjourned. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Aloha.
Aloha. Bye-bye.